The first is Homer. Homer. The second is Virgil. The third is Dante. Homer gave us the Iliad and the Odyssey, and by doing so, he constructed the basis of Greek civilization, which then became the basis of Western civilization. When we reach Virgil, he will take the Iliad and Odyssey and reimagine it as the Aeneid. The Aeneid will give rise to the Roman Empire and the Catholic Church. And even though the Roman Empire and the Catholic Church are two fundamental pillars of Western civilization, the Aeneid will lead to 1,000 years, over 1,000 years of the Dark Ages, when Europe stops being creative, okay? Dante will end the Dark Ages with the Divine Comedy. And the Divine Comedy will become the blueprint for the Renaissance, the Protestant Reformation, the Silent Revolution, and modernity itself, okay? Basically, Dante would create the world that we live in today. So the question then is, how does this happen? How is that Homer would create Greek civilization, then Virgil would then erode civilization, only be restored by Dante? The difference is in how they perceive the role of humans, or what does it mean to be human in this world. So for Homer, what he taught us is that love is the unifying force of the universe. So remember that Odysseus, he spends 20 years trying to return to his family, Penelope and Telemachus. And that imagination is the unifying force of the universe. Okay? And what matters is the individual's connection to the source or the monad. And if the individual is able to connect to the source, then that lights the universe. Okay? But what Virgil will do, because he serves empire, is he will cut us off from the source. Okay? And say, no, what matters is piety, obedience to authority. And by doing that, we cease to be individuals, we cease to be imaginative, civilization stops. So what Dante has to do is reconnect us back to the source. And if he does that, okay, then that will restore the imagination as the fundamental animating force of the universe. We can now be creative, and this will set a new path for humanity. All right? So throughout human history, there have been two competing countervailing forces. The force of empire that wants us to obey it and therefore cut us off from the source, and the force of civilization, of democracy, of love that wants us to connect back to the source and thus animate the universe with our imagination, okay? All right, so the Divine Comedy, in other words, it's fundamentally a conflict between Virgil and Dante. So Dante must defeat Virgil in order to restore our humanity. And previously, we've looked at Virgil's ideas, and today I want to look at Dante's ideas. Okay? So, we've been through Inferno, we've been through Purgatory, and now we are in Paradise. Okay? And so I want to show you the framework for Paradise. Now, you may think that once we're in Paradise, we've come to the journey's end. But in fact, Paradise itself is another journey that is actually more arduous. And Beatrice will be our guide through the stars as we reach God, okay? So what we will do is ascend through the 9 spheres in order to meet God. Why do we meet God? Because God will let us know who we truly, fundamentally are. All right? This is another depiction of our journey through the cosmos. We start off on the moon, okay, and then we'll make our way to the Mercury, and then we'll try to reach the Imperium, where God and his angels are. And this is the center of the universe. It is the source. This is our journey's end. All right, so we first start off on the moon. And Beatrice is now Donnie's guide. And you would think that these are two lovers that have not seen each other in decades. You would think that they'll just be happy hugging each other, or maybe they'll have a lot of sex. But in fact, what happens is that they start to engage in the deepest intellectual discussion. This is deep philosophy, okay? So heaven is fundamentally about debate, dialogue, and philosophy. So in other words, this really important idea is that we suffered in our world, in Inferno and Purgatory, not to cleanse ourselves of our sins. We suffered not in order to redeem ourselves and to make ourselves ready for heaven. We suffer in order to gain the knowledge requisite necessary for higher learning in heaven. All right, that's the purpose of heaven, to discover the truth of the universe, but we must first undergo Inferno and Purgatory to prepare our minds for the challenge, the intellectual challenge of paradise. Okay, so Beatrice and Donnie are having a conversation about the cosmos. And what she says is, be thankful that you're here. And here, we will start a journey into the truth of the universe. All right, and what Donnie says is, with the most devotion I can summon, I thank him, God, for who has brought me far from the mortal world. But now tell me, okay? I'm here to learn about the universe, and the first question I have is, what are the dark spots on this planet's body that there below on earth shall have made men tell the tale of Cain? She smiled somewhat, and then she said, if the opinion mortals hold false in error when the senses key cannot unlock the truth, you should not be struck by the arrows of amazement once you recognize that reason, even when support the senses, has short wings. But tell me what you think of it yourself, and I. What seems to us diverse up here is caused, I think, by matter dense and rare. And you certainly will see that your belief is deeply sunk in error if you listen carefully as I rebut it. Okay, so what's it saying? So the first question that Donnie has for Beatrice is, we're on the moon, and on the moon, at night, there are some dark spots, okay? And he asked her, how can we explain the fact that there are some dark spots on the moon? And she says, okay, well, the first thing you need to recognize is that you cannot figure this out by observation and reason alone. That will only lead you to error. The true power is your faith, your love, your intuition, your imagination. That's what will lead you to the truth. But humans are stuck using their observation and their reason, their science to figure out what this is. So you're always going to fall into error. But it's okay. It's okay to make an error. First tell me what you think is the reason. Okay? And then Donnie says, well, I think what most people think, which is that it's because of the density and rarity of the moon. And what this means is that there are some places in the moon which is hollow. Okay? If it's hollow, then that means that light can just pass through it. Right? For there to be illumination, there has to be reflection. So the light's going to pass through these hollow parts of the moon and escape into space. And so in other words, the dark spots are just the most hollow aspects of the moon. And every other place, it's just very dense, okay? Which means light can't pass through as we reflect back. And that's, from observation, from reason, the most logical explanation. Now, if you're curious as to why there are dark spots on the moon, what scientists believe is that the moon is not hollow, but there are certain rocks and minerals created by lava and so the reflective quality of these minerals is very low. Okay, that's a standard explanation we have, but quite honestly, it's only a guess. Okay, we're not completely sure. All right, so this is a mystery, and what Beatrice is going to do now is explain this can't be true. But the way she explains it is very interesting. She's going to explain it using scientific methods, experiments, observations to show you how this can't be true, okay? So the first thing she points out is that if it is true that there are certain aspects of the moon, certain parts of the moon that is hollow, then how to explain a lunar eclipse, a solar eclipse, right? When the moon covers the sun completely and the sun goes dark. Well, if in fact there are hollow aspects to the moon, it should not be completely black, right? The light should be able to break through these hollow aspects. So that shows you that, first of all, density and rare does not make any sense. This is wrong. Okay, that's part one. Part two is, okay, now you're saying to yourself that, well, the moon is uneven, okay? The topography is uneven in that there are mountains and crevices, okay? So, in other words, the dark are just really deep cavities in the moon. And then she says, let's do an experiment. And I'll show you that no matter how distant the reflection is, the brightness is still the same, okay? So what she's doing is she's using the scientific method to experiments to show you that your belief is wrong. And this becomes the basis of the scientific method, okay? All right, so let's read it together. The eighth sphere offers many lights to you, and you can tell that they in quality or in size are stars with different visages. If rarity and density alone cause this, then all the stars would share one power distributed in lesser, greater, or equal force. But different powers must be fruits of different formal principles. Were you correct, one only would be left, the rest destroyed, and more were rarity the cause of the dim spot you question, then in part this planet would lack matter through and through, or else as in a body lean and fat can alternate, so would this planet alternate the pages in its volume, okay? So she points out, number one, that if it is true that density and rarity is what causes the dark spots on the moon, then it should be the same for every other celestial body, every other planet, every other star. Density and rarity is what matters. And she's saying that's not true, okay? She's also pointing out that your argument about density and rarity means that the moon is uneven, right? There are some hollow spots to the moon, okay? To validate the first case, in the sun's eclipse, the light would have to show through just as when it crosses matter that is slender. That is not so. Therefore, we must consider the latter case. If I know that too, then your opinion surely is confuted, okay? So she's using the example of the solar eclipse to show us that it can't possibly be true that there are hollow spots to the moon, okay? There might be some shallow cavities to the moon, but there are no hollow, empty spots to the moon, okay? Then she says, if rarity does not run through and through the moon, then there must be a limit where thickness does not allow the light to pass. From there, the rays of sun would be thrown back, just as from glass that hides lead at its back, a ray of colored light returns reflected. Now you'll say that where a ray has been reflected from a section farther back, that ray will show itself to be more dim. Yet an experiment where you to try it could free you from your cabal just means doubt, and the source of your art's course springs from experiment. Taking 3 mirrors, place a pair of them at equal distance from you. Set the third midway between those two, but farther back. Then turning toward them at your back, have placed a light that kindles those 3 mirrors and returns to you, reflected by them all. Although the image in the farthest glass will be of lesser size, there you will see that it must match the brightness of the rest, okay? So what you're saying here is, okay, so if the moon is not completely hollow, it might be very deep, okay? So for example, the moon might be like this. In which case, you think that, logically speaking, this would be bright, but this would be dark. Okay? Right? And she's saying that's not true. If you actually do a science experiment, okay, you will discover that this is not true. And the science experiment she says is this: have 3 mirrors, okay? One here, one here, one here. Okay? Just have 3 mirrors. And then take a light, this is the light, and then shine it so that the mirrors reflect. And what she's saying is like, the furthest mirror might be small, and the 2 mirrors here may be larger, okay? The size might be different, but the brightness is still the same, okay? If you were to do this, you would discover this is true. And she's saying, okay, but what's interesting is that you can also extend this experiment and say, let's go further, okay? Let's just say, let's keep on going. All right? It would still be true. And in fact, you can go into eternity, okay? Just go through eternity, and it would still be true. Infinity. The light at the end of the universe would still burn as brightly as the original source. Okay? That's what she's saying here. Does that make sense, guys?